Good evening, fellow Plexers. This is another video for someone in the Plexaholics Facebook group, going out to David, who has moved his Plex media to a UNAS Pro that he says is fantastic, and he bought a B-Link NUC from Amazon, and he's trying to decide the best option for a Plex build on that. Is Ubuntu the best OS? He would love advice on how to build out a NUC to run PMS. And he says he has 5 Apple TVs and he does almost no transcoding. So an N100 based system is fine. It's perfectly fine. It's got a modern iGPU. Now, I've done a couple videos on a B-Link. I think it was an EQ12. And my only complaint was the NVMe drive that it came with wasn't that good. But if Dave's B-Link is anything like the one I tested out 6 months ago, 8 months ago, whenever it was, it should be fine as long as you use your own drives in it. So I'm going to suggest right off the bat, skip Windows, skip a Linux desktop, and go right to Unraid as a Docker host only install like I use to point to media on my own Synology NAS. And there's a bunch of reasons for it. So Dave, first of all, you've got your media storage under redundancy. I've never looked at a UNAS Pro, but from my understanding, you cannot do a JBOD setup on them, so you're running some sort of RAID in order to have redundancy for your Plex media files. I would assume that you'd like redundancy on your Plex server too. Oh, look. My son's streaming off my server. Unraid allows that easily. But let's talk about why a desktop Linux OS is not good for this. Linux is a pain in the ass with permission issues and a pain when you have to mount a remote folder. But Unraid as a server OS that's based on Linux is stupidly easy. There's no other way I can describe it. So let's start with the basics. I'm running a little Asus branded NUC. It's a 14 model, but it's got a 12th gen Ultra 5 125H processor in it. Very easy to set up hardware acceleration. And you see that this 12th gen i5 processor has the newer Intel ARC graphics iGPU. It's a Meteor Lake processor. So very easy to get the iGPU involved for Plex for a lot of power. And the N100 processor has a decent iGPU also. So what makes it really easy is how to mount your NAS. Everything is through the GUI. Everything is point and click. There's no Linux terminal that you have to drop to figure out what commands you need to run, how to mount a share on your I keep forgetting the name of it, UNAS Pro. It's all point and click. So what you do is you create a special user on your NAS for your Unraid install, and a special password. And then you come to this area of Unraid. We'll assume you've got it all set up first. You come to this area and you add a remote share. Click on the Windows icon and next. Search for servers. You'll see my older Synology NAS, my newer one. You see this actual Unraid install, but I don't have any files on it to share. I do have a test Unraid install running, so I could access the files there, or I could access files on my Western Digital MyCloud old single drive NAS. So basically, you just keep clicking through with a password and all that stuff, and it's easy peasy. You can auto mount this, and if I click into this, you see I'm on my Synology NAS. I'm into my movie library sort folder. The Plex server that runs here has access to all of this. And Plex is stupidly easy to spin up under Unraid. So let me go to the server and edit it. I prefer the Linux server image for Plex server. I've configured my path. This is the share I've got going through the Unraid unassigned devices plugin. This goes back to my Synology NAS. And even if I click on this here, here's all my folders. What else do I do? Let's see the advanced view, and let's go down here, show more settings. There's a little change I had to do from default. I had to change user to cache to make sure that the container installed on the RAID 1 redundant BTRFS cache pool. It's really just a volume, but Unraid calls it a cache pool. So that's where my Plex Docker container runs. There's not a lot of configuration going to it. Let's see here. If I go into apps, and I do installed apps, to get hardware acceleration going, you install these two, GPU statistics, I can't say it good, Intel GPU top, and a little bit of configuration, and you've got hardware acceleration going. Now, another beautiful thing with Unraid is you can install the app data backup plugin, and if I click into it and I go into the settings, I'm using the same mount to my media to store the backups of all my Unraid containers back on my Synology NAS, and I have my newer Synology NAS backing up to my older one through Hyper Backup. So this Unraid setup gets backed up to my main NAS, then it goes to deep storage on the older NAS. I'm never without this setup. This little NUC that it's running on could implode. I'll just get another one and restore everything. It's stupidly easy. It really isn't hard to learn. So let's show you. What else am I showing you? I'm not sure what the setup is for a UNAS Pro with a UPS, an uninterruptible power supply, but you definitely need one of those. So you get that configured so that your NAS shuts down within a few minutes of losing power and it starts up automatically. Well, at least in the Synology world, I can extend that to Unraid, and that's where NUC comes in. So my Synology NAS tells the Unraid NUC that we've lost power, the Synology NAS is running on battery, and it's going to shut down, so you'd better shut down too. All easy peasy. But now my Synology NAS running on a 9th gen Celeron processor takes a little bit longer to boot up and start sharing files than this super fast 12th gen i5 processor in the little NUC running an SSD volume. And I'll get to the SSD volume in a bit. So you can easily delay the mounting. I've delayed these, I think, 300 seconds or so. So that gives time for my Synology NAS to boot up and start sharing files. But because I'm delaying the mounting of these shares from the Syno NAS, I also have to delay the Docker containers from starting up. So the speed test is really just a sacrificial container that doesn't need to point to remote storage. So I have that first, and you can rearrange the order of how these load. I think you simply unlock it, and then you just drag them around. So I've added a delay of 300 seconds, and it doesn't delay this container from starting. What it does, it delays the start of the next container by 300 seconds. So I haven't configured dispatcher. It's on my deep list to get to. So then that takes 5 seconds. The next one takes 5 more seconds. Then Tautuli, another 30 seconds, delays the next program, and so on. So if I reboot my Synology NAS and this Unraid setup at the same time, it basically takes 8 minutes for the Plex container to start back up. But it works like clockwork. I can be I can be in South Carolina and not home in New York State visiting my grandkids, and I could have 16 power outages, and every time the power is restored, my server comes up like clockwork without interruption. So you definitely got to have a UPS. And I can't tell you how you'd accomplish the same thing easily under Windows or under Ubuntu. So you've got redundancy um, on your NAS, and now I'm going to show you redundancy on the Unraid setup. And this is perfect for a NUC. Did you know that with Unraid you can create a RAID 1 array with two dissimilar drive technologies? I have a 500 gigabyte Western Digital SATA SSD drive in a RAID 1 pool with a 500 gigabyte Western Digital Red NVMe drive. Two different drive technologies, one pool. It's called a cache pool. In the Synology universe, we'd call this a volume. But this is a small cache pool just as a home for Docker containers to run on. And I have a huge Plex server, and with the other containers, I'm only using a little bit of this 500 gigabyte cache pool. I could really do 250 gigabytes, but where are you going to find two Western Digital Red NAS SSDs in that size? So you don't have to have really large SSDs. If you're just going to run some Docker containers or maybe just Plex, 500 gigabytes is a sweet spot. One of each. Your B-Link NUC should have the one NVMe slot and the spot for one SATA drive. So redundancy here, easy backup of your containers, and it also backs up your flash drive, the boot drive under Unraid, and I have that back up through the same mount points back to my NAS, as I mentioned. So I'm trying to think if I missed anything. And I know I said Unraid is stupidly easy. So I bought my first Synology NAS in 2019. And with the help of a few YouTube sites, especially Will's Space Rex YouTube site, I found the configuration and the maintenance of a Synology NAS pretty easy. And DSM is just a really easy Linux server OS. I took to Unraid like a duck to water. I don't find it hard. But again, I'm not running regular storage here. Now, I do have regular storage on a test Unraid build, but it's also on a NUC, so I don't have any redundancy. I have a 1 terabyte rusty laptop drive in as the only storage drive. And then I have a single cache drive. It's a Western Digital Blue. This is for testing purposes. If someone in this group or another group is having trouble under Unraid, this is my sacrificial bench system that I can screw around with and not worry about it. And nothing ever happens to my main system that my friends and family use. But Unraid, again, I'll say it for the fourth or fifth time, stupidly easy. And it does everything you could want it to do easily too. So, extend a UPS from your regular NAS to this little NUC. Two different drive technologies in one RAID, one cache pool. Easy mounts back to your NAS. Easy peasy. No terminal commands. Nothing to go wrong. It just always works. So, I know Daniel says to use any OS you're comfortable with, but if you can manage the software of your UNAS Pro, you can manage this. And it's such an upgrade from Windows or from Ubuntu. This is not a Windows or Linux is better than the other discussion. It's a Linux server OS better than either a desktop OS by Windows or a desktop OS by Ubuntu. I am a Linux guy. I run a Linux desktop. I do some videos in my alternate boot of Ubuntu, and I do a lot in my main desktop of Pop OS. I gave up Windows in 2006 before Windows 7 came out. So this is not a Windows versus Linux. It's a desktop OS versus a server OS. And truth be told, I would rather have my media on a Synology NAS than a self-built Unraid. I like Synology Hybrid RAID. I understand how parity drives work in Unraid, but none of that comes into play because I have a RAID 1 cache pool with these two SSDs. It's traditional RAID, and I don't want storage here. I just want my containers running, and it's rock solid for that. So, sorry if I over-explain things, but I'm enthusiastic. I think this is the absolute best way to accomplish what you're looking to accomplish. And the only con that people will tell you is it's going to cost some money. But I think the basic Unraid license is now $49 for a year. It's not a lot of money for perfection. And I got into Unraid before it was a yearly cost, so I'm quite happy. But this other setup, the second Unraid test server I have, I'm paying $49 a year for that, brother, just to help people like you out who might get stuck with Unraid. And I'm not batting an eye at that price because it's a phenomenal OS. And that's the end of my sales pitch. So, Dave, let me know what you think. And if you have trouble setting things up, feel free to tap me. That's what I'm here for. Happy Plexing.